Okay, thank you again for coming back to episode 4 of Psych Your Way to Success. Myself, Claire Beich, and
Heather Fife.
are excited to talk about a really fun topic that someone brought to us, which is the stigma of psychology in the workplace, maybe in life. We'll see where the conversation takes us. But there is, oddly enough, a little bit of a stigma when it comes to psychology, especially in the workplace, certain types of workplaces. And to give you a bit of a background, when I say stigma, that is basically, that negative connotation that follows anybody that seeks out things like psychology or says that they're in therapy, or even people that come in like Heather and I, who have a education in industrial organizational psychology now, or in general psychology, right? I think it's really interesting, and I can't wait to hear from Heather about maybe some of the experiences that she's had, whether personal and work related experiences, of those negative stigmas, that stigma that could be attached when walking into the workplace, or even hearing about somebody that is experiencing it. So let's get you kicking it off.
I love this topic, Claire. I think it's so awesome because there's two different sides to it, right? Because
Hmm.
as a IO psychologist, when I say that, oh, I'm studying to be an IO psychologist, everybody says, oh no, don't
Don't,
analyze me.
yes.
I'm like, oh, I would only analyze you in the workplace, and it's only to make you more efficient and like make the company more profitable and make the environment better for everybody. That's that
Hmm.
that is what it is.
Oh, yeah.
And but then when you think about from the other standpoint of somebody in therapy or somebody working with a psychiatrist, psychologist, it does make you think a little bit about it.
Hmm.
And I think that there is becoming more awareness around it, and there's more tolerance for it, and there's more acceptance of it, but we're still not at a spot where it's it's normal to be talking to a psychologist or therapist. And I think that's interesting because most people use their friends as their like quote unquote therapist.
How so many friends are no longer friends anymore.
Exactly. Well, and I just think that's so funny because it's like they have zero training. They're only after your best interest. So
Yes.
it's so one-sided. You know what I mean? Like I always joke with my friends when I'm like, and he was such a whatever, you know what I mean? Like this happened and
Hmm.
that happened and this is, and there's no like, well, can you see it from a different perspective? And I think that's where that perspective and perception comes in play of looking at things from a different vantage point.
Hmm.
But um, I when I hear people are going to therapy or going and seeing somebody, in my mind, I'm like, I want that person on my team. Because they're willing to do that inner work and they're willing to me, that shows that they're willing to look at themselves as opposed to blaming everybody else. Like,
Right.
can't be me. And I think somebody who's willing to do the work is willing to receive difficult feedback, is willing to change maybe something that they're doing, and that they're also willing and able to give you constructive feedback,
Yeah. I
you
find
know?
that funny. And I think you bring up a really great point here. Somebody that is maybe willing to see a therapist or even be open to the idea might be very willing. And I know this is really tough in business. Uh, Admit that they're not perfect. I think that's something, whether it's in your relationships or if it's in your work life, finding people that don't think that they need to change. And those can be the toughest people that you have to work with, right? And I love the idea because so much of it is, maybe sometimes, if we think about it, are those the people that create the stigma? Are those the people that, look down on IO psychology or psychology in general and create that stigma? because they think that they're already perfect, and anybody that's not as perfect as them um, is, I mean, I'll just tell you, when I've asked people, hey, what's one word that describes, and I challenge anybody listening right now, when I ask the question, what is one word that describes mental health for you? What's one word that you think of immediately when I say mental health, or mental health in the workplace? Just the one word. And oftentimes I get back, um, I get back a myriad of responses, but oftentimes it's a very negative response, like crazy. Um, and oh man, I can't even think of all the words, but honestly, it was really based around the word crazy or help, or like these things
Oh,
that we
interesting.
really associate almost old school mental institutions when you say mental health. And unfortunately, that seems to be the stigma that has carried, even on some level, some degree, along with it. So you're right. There's a multitude of aspects to it. And I find it really interesting how, unfortunately, I mean, I wish it wasn't always that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up interesting. My one word would be challenging. I
Ooh,
think mental health is very challenging
okay.
in many aspects. And I like a challenge. So to me,
Mhm.
that's a positive word. I like being pushed and um, challenged, I guess, right?
Yeah,
But when you think about it, have you watched the show Billions? I know this is like so
I
like
haven't. No.
Oh my God. Okay, so I think that whole concept is amazing. And I think it did give a little bit more awareness to having psychology in a high pressure, high
Mhm.
intense job. And just I don't know if you know, but like they have like a investment firm and they have a psychologist on staff who is helping different people. They pay her a ton of
Yeah,
money just to like help work through things. And in the show, I know it's all like whatever, but in the show, it shows that like when she's talking to them, that it actually brings about a lot of learning and understanding, and
mhm,
then they can perform at a very high level because they have that ability to go in and speak to somebody. And most of the times it's not about whatever you're frustrated about. And I mean, I've definitely ruined relationships and business dealings and everything. I think we all have. We can all like think back, if we're really self-reflective, of a time where we've ruined a relationship that we care about, that it's really hard to like put it back together. And it just would have been so nice to talk to like a third party and be like, this is what's happening.
yep,
Like, you know
absolutely.
how much I love this person, or, whatever, or this deal is really important to me, but I'm getting triggered by this email that they sent. And I want to just write back and be like, you know,
Don't write that email.
exactly. But a lot of times you don't have somebody to talk to that is outside of it. And
Right.
I think that's very, very dangerous to, anyway, so that's where I think it is a benefit as an IO psychologist. Of course, I think that, so that's so like biased for sure.
Mhm.
But I do see the benefits in my life and in my workplace. Like, if I could have that more, it would be awesome. And but I do think that it's hard. I don't know how would you say we should address that in the workplace?
That's what my next question was gonna be. I think the direction is great. We know that it exists, and even some people will say that it doesn't exist. And quite honestly, we do know that in some environments, it does. A lot of the times, if you have a very I'm male dominated fields typically will have that, right? And typically, that doesn't mean always, just typically. You look at a lot of police work, if you look a lot at government work, a lot of the military really has a stigma attached to it when it comes to, oh man, you have to go see so and so, or it's just a check, a box that they have to check off. And so they just go in, they talk, they try to get clear, and then they go back to work, right? That's the standard protocol that you see on TV. Like, and if you're in those professions, that's what it is. But man, like, we really kind of want to look towards those people that do a lot of culture changes, right? Those people that do a lot to cultivate maybe a more healthy company culture, because that's where it's coming from. Like, it's coming from leadership. Leadership defines culture, because how else? I mean, I'd love to hear your take on it. Who else is everybody's looking up to the leaders in order to define what the company really means, right? You can have all of those beautiful fancy words on the wall when you walk in the door or in a meeting room and say, this is what our focus is, this is what our vision and our mission statement is. But at the end of the day, it's how you behave as a leader. It's how you behave as the CEO, the president, the owner, the any leadership in it. As long as they watch the behavior being condoned and continued, everybody else is going to believe that's what the truth is, not what's written, right? How do we change that?
Well, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it. It's the leadership that it's actually the top that actually matters. And I, as a
Everybody matters, but yes.
no, no, I mean, I'm saying it matters.
Yeah.
Definitely everybody matters. Obviously, I'm saying, but in this situation where you're talking about the values and the vision and the mission, as
Hmm.
a leader of a corporation, even as a leader, as like a parent, right? It's the
Yeah.
same at every level. It's what the parents are doing that actually matters. That'll actually affect the kids more than
Hmm.
what they say, right? And so I always say that in a business, it's the same thing. If the top of the leadership isn't emulating those values and those standards to a T, not even just like almost or like, and they actually have to do it better than what they're saying, right? So, like,
Right.
um, I always said when I was leading a company that, like, if our value is kindness, then I have to, like, that has to be in every single thing I do. I don't have the luxury of being not kind one
Hmm.
day when I'm frustrated. You know what I mean? Like, it is like you have to follow and you have to be kind to everybody. Like, that
Yeah.
matters to, like, I mean, I was in healthcare, so it was like the patients, the people who are the janitors that are cleaning the other people in the building, like everything, everything, everything. And so I think people take some of those values and don't see how important they are. And I do think in a lot of ways it would help if the leadership also had a therapists, psychologists, like
Sure.
things that, and it was like that it was talked about because that was what was cool about Billions. I know it's a silly example, but it kind of like
No.
it portrays the point. He would go in and talk to her too. So it was
Right.
like everybody felt like they could go in there and it was understood that if he was at the door, whoever was in there had to leave. You know what I
Ah, I
mean?
love that.
And because it was that important. And I think that was my takeaway from the silly show,
No,
which
that's
actually
great.
is a really good show. You should watch it. But is how important he thought it was, even for himself. He wasn't like, oh, here, everybody, you guys need this. He was like, no, I need it more. So I'm gonna hire this girl mainly for me, you know,
And then say it's for everybody.
everybody can use her, but if I need her, then I need her right at that second. And that's how important it was. And I wish more people would take the mental health that serious, where it was that important and it was that big of a deal that everybody needed to have access to it. And honestly, he
Well,
didn't want people leaving, you know? Like,
exactly. It costs more to have employees leave. But I think if we also look at it in that sense that, I mean, you did it too. You calling it out. Like, if we just if we normalize it, we start removing stigma. And I think being able to normalize it, somebody has to start being vulnerable first. And we have to have the acceptance from everybody. And again, the acceptance should and hopefully is coming from the top down, right? It is coming from your leadership, your C-suite, your owners of, yes, no, this is a thing. And if we don't talk about it, then it becomes taboo, then it becomes stigmatized, and then it becomes a thing that, people just, oh, talk about in, dark corners over by the watering, like the water cooler. And it becomes gossip rather than, no big deal. So I definitely encourage, if you are in a workplace where you want that changed, start having those conversations. If you're willing and you're bold enough to be that first person to do it, talk about it first. Ask the question, why is it bad? Why not ask that question? Why is it bad?
Right. And I always think of it mostly like also like a coach. Like we have
Yeah.
no qualms to have a coach for our bodies, right? Like I know how to take care of my body, but I'm definitely going to hire a personal trainer, and nobody's like, oh. And why don't we do that same thing for our mind? It's like a trainer for our mind. And I don't think that I think you're right. I would love to like take away that stigma and talk about it more. And so I love that you brought this topic to our discussion today, because I think it's so important, especially as we're like possibly going into a recession and,
You know,
it's getting cold again and everybody's going to be home. And it does play a significant role on our mental health.
yes. And you're right. We are getting into that season where seasonal depression is happening for a lot of people out there, whether or not they know they have it or whether or not they want to admit that they have it. There are lots of options out there for you. Obviously, being able to speak to somebody is what I think Heather and I would both suggest. And I encourage you to do so, even if you don't think that you need it. Maybe it will help encourage somebody in your life to be able to do the same. It gives them that permission, maybe, to be able to do the same thing, because if they see you doing it and they look up to you, then awesome. Maybe I can do it too. Um, I think something else that I would love to, like, you have your show, I have my show, mine is Shrinking. And if you haven't seen it yet, I highly, highly encourage anybody and everybody to go watch that show. But it is absolutely hilarious. It is obviously about therapists, and what is, oh my gosh, I'm gonna made fun of for this one. Who's the gentleman that was in Star Wars and Indiana Jones? The actor. Oh my God, please, Heather, you got to know it. Either way, there's,
So bad at this game.
I know, me too. I don't remember names, so I apologize. One of the most famous actors ever, but
George Lucas? No, no,
no,
no.
he's the
That's
one who, yeah, he's the director.
Harrison Ford. Wait, are you
Harrison
talking about
Ford,
Okay.
there it is. I told you.
Oh my God, I just died. Sorry.
No, I love it. So Harrison Ford is in it along with Jason. I want to say Seagal, but I'm probably wrong. But absolutely incredible cast, incredible
What's it
acting.
called?
It's called Shrinking. And
Oh,
as Heather starts to look that up, I'll just say that it gives a really nice take that psychology isn't as bad as a lot of people think it is. Like, it really is just simply there. It is scientifically proven over and over again at this point that you have a connection with your mind and body, right? Like, it is your mind that tells your body to do different things. If your mind is unwell, so does your body becomes unwell as well. If you are repressing things, if you're doing all of these things, and not to get all, super soft and mushy and hold hands and sing kumbaya, I'm just saying that each one of these things are connected, and it is proven at this point. And we have doctors changing their statements, luckily, and saying this is just as important as your physical health, and your mental health can cause very, very damaging physical effects. So, yes, let's change the stigma. Let's find a way.
I
And my dog,
agree.
see, my dogs agree. Yeah, it's awesome. As we wrap up here, any last words?
I No, I mean, honestly, I think you wrapped it up so well that we need to change the stigma and be okay saying, I go to a therapist, I go to a psychologist, and bring it in the workplace where people can say that with confidence and not feeling like it makes them less of a person.
Absolutely. Well said. Again, if you have the ability to have that conversation, not obviously know your situation, situational awareness, I guess is what we're going to call it. But understand that if given the opportunity, um, having the conversations, I think can really start to remove that stigma. There's a lot of other strategies out there. There's a lot of people who do this for a living. So you can also research that. For anybody out there, I do want to put out there for anybody that is suffering any kind of crisis or anything like that, please know that you have a lot of resources. If you would like, there is always a crisis text line that you can reach out to, completely anonymous, and always feel free, please, 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 to seek any kind of assistance before you do anything else. So there are people that care and are there for you. Other than that, I just want to say thanks again, Heather. It's been another great session chatting with you. And we hope to see you all next week, next Friday. And please continue to send us your suggestions for topics. We love stuff like this. So thanks again for this topic. And we will see you next week. Have a good
Yes.
one.
Bye.